we're going to do a few problems from the practice number 3 today. So this is practice number 3. And I want to start with number 1. Number 1 is probably the most different of the problems we've seen so far because you can't rewrite the numerator at all. So you just have 1 plus cosine of x. You can rewrite the denominator as 1 plus, what's secant, guys? 1 over cosine, right? Well, in the numerator, I don't even have fractions. 1 plus cosine. You can't put them together at all. Now here, I do have a fraction. So I need to get a what? A common denominator. So I'm going to put this over 1, and I'm going to clean up the denominator a little bit. So if I have a 1 and a cosine, my common denominator is cosine. Agree? So that first, if I compare a 1 and a cosine, that means this needs cosine. So it becomes cosine of x plus 1. I shouldn't have written the plus yet. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Cosine of x. Agree? Now this cosine matches this cosine, so what are we going to put over there now? Plus 1. Right? Now in the numerator, I have 1 plus cosine of x. Let's make it a fraction so I can flip. So all over 1. I might take good notes on this one because this one's weird. So when I flip this, I have a fraction and a fraction. When I flip it, I get cosine of x over cosine of x plus 1. It's a multiplication problem now, so I can cancel. This cancels with this. And what's the answer? Cosine of x. Very different. Okay, now you try a few, and then I'll come back and work with a few more. All right, so let's take a look at problem 4. It's a little tricky. You want to be sure you take good notes on 4. Now, it's an addition problem, okay, and you always want to look for tricks first, right? Well, we've seen 1 in sine quite a bit, but it's not a trick because it's not what? It's not squared, okay? Same down here. It's not squared. So now let's look to rewrite. Well, everything's in sine and cosine, so there's no rewriting allowed. So this is a plus problem. Up here, guys, please pay attention. This isn't, I need everybody working on 4. This is an addition problem. So what are we going to have to do to solve it? Get a common denominator. Well, again, a little different because I've got a cosine and a 1 plus sine. It doesn't matter what they are. You just need one of each for your common denominator. So my common denominator is a cosine and a 1 plus sine of x. And you can put them both in parentheses if you want, but you need one of each. Now let's compare. In my first fraction, they both have a cosine. So this first fraction actually needs this big 1 plus sine of x. How do I do that? I've got a binomial and a binomial. What am I going to have to do here? You're actually going to have to FOIL this. And if you, like I said, if you want to write yourself a note, you have to FOIL that. So take your time with it. Ready? Let's look carefully. A 1 times 1 is 1. And then I want a 1 and a sine, which will give me sine of x. Now let's move to the sine. We'll multiply the sine by both. Sine times 1 is sine. And sine times sine is sine squared. Excellent. That's only the first fraction. Go to the second fraction. Glance at them. What does the second fraction need? It's got 1 plus sine. What do I need? It needs cosine. You're going to multiply this by cosine. Cosine and cosine make cosine squared. You have to extend the line a little to even make it fit. The numerator is so huge. Now, let's clean up the top. What do y'all notice in the top? You're always looking for little shortcuts. What do you notice? Excellent. You're catching on to them. That's excellent. This is 1. What else do you notice will go together? This right here, right? How many sine x's are there? No, not sine thing. I'm glad you said that. This is not sine squared because we're adding 2 sines. Okay. So this is 1 and this is 1. What's 1 plus 1? 2. Sine x and another sine x give me how much? 2 sine of x. All divided by the same denominator. Same denominator. Which it still looks like a giant mess. But it's really not. What do you notice about that numerator? What can I do to it? What can I take out of that numerator? Very good. I can factor out a what? A 2. So I'm going to make myself a little note on here now. I'm going to take out a 2. If you take 2 out of 2, what do you get? 1. If you take 2 out of 2 sine, what are you going to get? Sine. All over the same denominator. Now do you see it? Now it's better, isn't it? What happens to the 1 plus sine and the 1 plus sine? They cancel. What's 2 over cosine? What's 1 over cosine? Secant. What's 2 over cosine? 2 secant. That one is tricky, which is why we're taking notes over them. Okay, let's move to 6. Another tricky one. We're going to move to 6. Again, is cosecant and cotangent, is that a shortcut when you're adding? No, they're not squares, right? You're always looking for shortcuts. A secant and a 1. I've seen ones and secants together, but no square, not a shortcut. When there's no shortcuts, what do you have to do? You have to rewrite. So let's rewrite the top. Start way over here so you have room. 1 over sine of x minus cotangent is cosine over sine. Divided by secant is 1 over cosine minus, okay, it's just a 1. How am I going to write that so it fits in like everything else? 1 over 1. Okay, guys, I have 2 fractions on top and 2 fractions on bottom. In order to flip and multiply, I need 1 fraction on top and 1 fraction on bottom, correct? So I need to clean up the top and clean up the bottom. Okay, let's clean up the top. What's cool about the top already? What does it already have? Common denominator. So it's just sine of x. So what am I going to put at the top? Just 1 minus cosine. I don't even have to do anything except make it look prettier. Do y'all see what I mean? Did y'all follow me on that? Look, on the numerator, there's already a common denominator. Some of you guys aren't paying attention. It's going to make your project and your test really hard. So my common denominator is sine. It stayed sine. You're good. So I just slid over the 1 in cosine. Didn't have to do anything. Now here, what's my common denominator here? A cosine and a 1. Common denominator is cosine. The first fraction matches, so I'm just going to slide the 1 over. There's my minus. What's the second fraction need? A cosine. Is it looking better? Now what are we going to do? Yep, we're going to flip this. So cosine over 1 minus cosine. What cancels? Excellent, thank you. 1 minus cosines cancel, and you're left with cosine of x over sine of x. What's x over y instead of y over x? Cotangent. Okay, I'm not going to do number 8, but I'd like to talk to you about 8. You can do 8 in 2 ways. You can rewrite and then multiply, or you can FOIL first. It's up to you. I probably would FOIL first. So on the first one I would do, I'll take these and multiply it by tangent. So sine, cosine, and tangent. And then I would say plus sine, cosine, and cotangent. and then it would be right. Because then you just have a multiply and multiply. Now, turn it to the back, please. And one more piece of advice. Look at 11. It's a binomial and a binomial. What are you going to have to do on 11? Foil. Foil it out. Okay. You might go turn back to the front and work on the front.